It's a playoff time. We're going full court press.
Fener and Cska sweep, Luka Doncic dominates in Istanbul, and we've got Game 5, baby, as you never bet against Billy. It's all ahead of us now on Sweet 16. Tune in.
Hello and welcome to the 24th episode of Sweet 16. Yes, it's another edition, maybe the final edition of Going Full Court Press, just before we take off to the Final Four, and not by bus, may I say that. First of all, let's say hi to both Emmett and Aris. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hello Moshe, hello Aris, hello Sweet 16 viewers, listeners, followers, however you check us out. Greetings from Dublin, where yes, I am actually properly dressed and have cleaned myself before a show. This doesn't happen often. You know it's an important show if I've done that.
And hello from Athens, where the last game of the playoffs will be played this week, and we are more than happy to cover it live and see if history repeats itself or if Anadolu Efes have a fighting chance.
Well, it's safe to say we've had a tremendous week of playoff action in the EuroLeague, and we got to say that some of the results we got were not the ones we were expecting, so to speak, but still, great performances. We were so happy to get a Game 5 between Anadolu and Olympiacos that are simply putting everything they got on the court, and they leave nothing to chance. And right now, this is the playoff series to watch, and not just because that is the only playoff series left. We've had great things, which we will talk ahead. Emmett, can you walk us through what are we expecting on this episode of Sweet 16 Going Full Court Press?
Absolutely, Moshe. It's a pretty big episode ahead. Obviously, we're going to lead off with that Game 5 series that's happening between Efes and Olympiacos. It goes back to the SEF, the Peace and Friendship Stadium, of course, in Piraeus. And then we're going to look at the troubles and tribulations of the other side from Athens, of course, which is Panathinaikos. They fell at Fenerbahce. We're going to go through that series and how Fener really brought it together at the end. And then moving on swiftly, we'll look at the other sweep, Cska and Baskonia, before finishing off with the, well, not the real arrival, because we've already had the real arrival, but with the playoff arrival of Luka Doncic, because we finally saw him come good. It's all ahead of us now. Like, there's no, dressing around here. It's, well, I am actually dressed, but there's no dressing in that sense around here. And so, everybody, let's go full court press.
4 minutes is just sometimes too much time to talk about what's happening. It's time to go full court press.
Well, we finally got one Game 5, thankfully, because, don't get me wrong, we're not biased in terms of who progresses where, but we want to see at least one Game 5 series every playoffs, and we got it. It's Anadolu Efes and Olympiacos. Interesting Game 4. Like, Game 3 actually was kind of like Game 4, only Game 4 was like the smarter version Olympiacos-wise. Efes just coming out like a charging bull, Olympiacos reeling them in. In Game 4, Efes probably came out a little bit too fast. It was almost like that heavyweight title fight between Joshua and Klitschko, where Joshua just looked gassed early. Efes got gassed early. Only the difference was Oli aren't a 41-year-old who hasn't had to fight that way in a long time. Oli's not a veteran but not old team, which is used to wars. It's used to going to battle. And we saw that in Game 4 very much so. Obviously, Olympiacos had like one quick look at Billy. Vasilis Benoulis just got up there, got the job done. And it's going to Game 5 where, if Olympiacos win, we'll get identical pairings to Madrid in 2015. I suppose, Aris, this series, Games 3 and 4, and looking ahead to Game 5, what did you make of them and what are you expecting?
I think that it's a series that demonstrates the value of experience. If you look at the two teams, they are pretty similar, both in the general philosophy of their game and also in the way that they like to play. Both teams excel when they press on defense and find some open court opportunities. And speaking with Brian Dunston before the start of the season, he said to me that we would like to pretty much like Olympiacos, and he was right on spot. It's very interesting to see how similar those two teams are, and the bottom line is that Olympiacos been there also in the past. Anadolu Efes is now trying to get to the point that Olympiacos is, but the experience and the know-how of Olympiacos is what turned the tide. And of course, Vasilis Panoulis, who is having, I think by the numbers, this might be the best playoff series of Spanoulis in the history of his EuroLeague career. So you have a guy that can pull his team out, and that seems to be the difference so far. I wouldn't bet against Olympiacos because so far no guest team has won a game 5 on the road. And this makes things even more complicated for Anadolu Efes, which already became this version of Anadolu Efes became the first team ever in the history of Efes that won on the road in the playoffs. So I don't see lightning strike twice, but they are very similar teams in the way they play, in the way they think, in the way that the defense makes everything click and work, and both of them are not at this point yet, at least, or at the way they play, they are not great half-court teams. Both of them have issues when they play half-court basketball. They like, if they run, it's a different story. And they have forwards and big men that can finish in transition. They have very gifted passers. Still, the bottom line is in this series the difference maker is experience, and Olympiacos has this experience, and that was what changed everything in Game 4. If a team that didn't have the mentality and the know-how of Olympiacos started a game being back by 12 after 4 minutes, I don't think that they could ever return and win the game. And I think that Olympiacos pretty much coming back and winning big games is the signature of this era of EuroLeague and of this team. Don't you think so, Emmett?
Absolutely, Aris. I can't really argue that one. When it comes to coming back in big games, Oli have a lot of history in that respect. I think you're with us in that one, Moshe.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It is Olympiacos. You know, we've been talking about them throughout the season. We've been talking about Anadolu throughout the season. And I do think that Aris made amazing points. I mean, like the fact that, first of all, they are two very similar teams in their style of play. And the fact that should you want to stop them, you want to get them playing half-court sets. But for me, what made the difference, and I think it's something that we've mentioned a few episodes ago, was the presence of one Patrick Young. Because, you know, he came back from a nasty injury that truly took him some time to get back into the rhythm. But I think that physically-wise, he's the only presence that can actually, you know, make things a bit harder for Dunston. Now, looking at the stats, I'm not saying that he was the only one responsible for what Brian Dunston had done in Game 4, shooting 2 out of 9 for 2 points. But look at the stats, you can see that they also managed to contain Tyler Honeycutt. And Tyler Honeycutt, in a lot of ways, is you know, one of their players that if he has a good game, you know that he's going to impact the game. And I think that Oli managed to contain him the best way they could. Now, Game 5 at Seth, man, come on, this is Olympiacos. I would go with them hands down each and every day of the week. And not because I'm disrespecting Anadolu, it's simply for the fact that, as Aris mentioned, they have the experience. They have been there before. And plus, there's the thing with, Bill, since Vasilis Panoulis is expecting his 5th child, as we were told. And, you know, last 4 times it happened, you know, it ended up with 3 EuroLeague winnings, 3 EuroLeague titles, and 1 final game. So, you know, I really cannot go against this statistic, you know, and especially since it's, you know, it's V-Span and Printezis together on the same team. It's something to expect for, but honestly, you guys, looking at what happened during that game, wouldn't you agree that seeing both Young, you know, maybe getting a bit more minutes now? I know that Nikola Milutinov was getting, last time, I'm assuming it's because of the injury he had. So, assuming we're going to see much more of him. But the way you saw this game developing, did you see the, you know, the same way with Honeycutt, Dunston, Young, the way it all, happened?
Yeah, a lot of this as well is, so I'm not the biggest believer in Patrick Young, but Moshe has been working on convincing me about Patrick Young. A lot of my bias, and I'll be straight up, it goes way back to his Florida days, where I thought he wasn't the rim protector he's improved as up to now. He's still not an elite rim protector, but he's a lot better. But the physicality against Dunston was obviously a huge factor. If you're going to pick one of them, yes, Young is the man to go with. What I saw though was the tandem approach, like having sort of him and Ken Birch take turns was more effective in a way because it essentially kept Dunston having to sort of adjust how he took on the guy against him essentially. So you had Young was the, straight up clear, here's a guy who can live with you physically. Birch obviously had that length factor going for him, and Kem did some pretty, for a guy who's not old, some old man ball is all I'm saying in terms of some of the ways he addressed Dunston. And so definitely Moshe's got me convinced here that Patrick Young is a far, far, far better baller than I had been claiming. I suppose Aris, looking at that matchup in right up the gut there, what do you think Ole needs to do? Is it more Patrick Young or what is they've got to do?
We have to acknowledge that so far throughout the series the best big man is Brian Dunston. He's by far the most consistent and the most ready big man for the series. If the Serb of Olympiacos, if Milutinov wasn't hurt, because he's a very different kind of player, we may have seen a very interesting matchup, because I don't think that there is one player in the roster of Anadolu Efes that has the same characteristics with Milutinov. Milutinov has improved greatly. He has more aspects in his game that most people are giving him credit to, and even if he has a contract with Olympiacos for one more season, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is his last season in Europe and he goes straight to the San Antonio Spurs, because I believe that he is ready. In theory, that could have been the series in which Patrick Young would return to the spotlight. This didn't exactly happen, but Young demonstrated some important progress. In theory also, Patrick Young, at least medical-wise, he is as healthy as he could be. There is no issue other than he's getting his game back and his mentality back and his aggressiveness back, which is all mental. There is no health issue at this point with Young. And it will be very interesting to see, even in Game 5, if Milutinov is not ready yet to play heavy minutes, how Young will react, because Dunston is a challenge for Young. Birch is having a great season, but he's clearly outmatched in the duel with Young. Young is in the duel with Dunston. Dunston is more ready, he's stronger, and he's much more not only physical but also basketball-wise useful in things that he does for his team. Young has the body to create issues for Dunston, but this hasn't happened yet. So we can't deny that Dunston is the best big man of the series, and I think that he's emerging as time goes by as one of the best big men in the league without question anymore, because when he left Olympiacos to go to Anadolu Efes, many still questioned his abilities to be among the top level of the EuroLeague. Still, this is a challenge for Young, and no matter what the result will be or what Olympiacos will do at home, everyone will also keep a close eye to Young, because at Game 3 and Game 4 he demonstrated that he's getting better and better. He's not at the level that he was expected to be. Young was added to Olympiacos in order to be the starting center of the team. and before his injury he was on the road to be that. This is his last chance before the Final Four against an opponent like Dunston to prove it.
I totally agree that, Dunston has emerged as one of the best big men in the competition. I mean, no one would dispute that. I mean, evidently, fact-wise, he's been outstanding. But one of the guys that is definitely going under the radar here, in my opinion, is Alex Kirk. Now, I gotta level it with you guys. I've seen Alex Kirk play, I've been following him since he was playing in Italy last year for Pistoia. Now we're talking a big man that shot 37.5 percent beyond the arc. So we're talking big men that can spread the floor. However, they are only utilizing him, trying to utilize him from inside. And that is not the only thing that he does, and he can do a lot more. And I think that in a way they are missing to do something that they haven't done yet, which is to mix things up, which is to bring something new, which is, in the bottom line, exactly what you need to do in playoffs.
Yeah, Moshe, so with Kirk, absolutely, I think we haven't seen the full range of his game, and that's pretty clear. I think it's too late for us to see FS3 deploy it out. I think their system doesn't quite have room for it yet, and it's too late now to make that adjustment in time for Game 5. Of course, two teams who won't be needing a Game 5, they didn't need a Game 4, were Fenerbahce and Panathinaikos. Panathinaikos brought a lot of intensity to Istanbul, but never really looked like they were going to phase Fenerbahce. It always felt like Fenerbahce had another gear or two to go, and it sure proved that way come the end when pretty much tired and out of it, Pau just got beat up. It was pretty comprehensive for Fenerbahce in the end. I suppose, Moshe, well, I've already addressed the bus elsewhere this week, last week at this stage, pretty comprehensively. I suppose, beyond the bus, what did you make of this game?
Well, it is quite being asked here to say that the wheels of the bus go round and round, but I remember expecting this playoff series, I think, more than everything, because I wanted to see how Zoc's team would cope playing at the Oaxaca, where they've never won before since his arrival anyways. And to be honest, well, Panathinaikos were one of the best home teams. They were sharing the first place with CSKA and Madrid with a 14-1, 14 wins to 1 loss at home. And even that loss was in a way, achieved just after Coach Xavi Pascual arrived. So, it was kind of interesting to see how it will all go down eventually. So seeing that, we were expecting, we said, yes, we're going to get a great playoff series. And all I can say now is, that it? I mean, that quick, that's how it ended. Now, I have a lot of criticism towards the way they've looked, and not for the, Pau had the talent. They should have been more than a sweep in this series. That series should have went to 3-1, 3-2 maybe even potentially winning it. Something was way off there. And I think that, when you look down at the bus incident, that might tell you a story. I know it might be overanalyzing it, but for the fact that 4 players from that team have decided not to join their teammates. Now, I know that there was all this, fuss about EuroLeague champs, which you have to respect them, and I totally agree with it, to the point where, it all comes down to why didn't all of them travel together, whether it was by plane or by bus. I think it says a lot about, the team's togetherness, and I'm not saying chemistry, because obviously they had great chemistry, but something, when something that happened that was, considered as a professional failure, it's like 4 of them decided to go their own path, the others to their own path. And I think there's something much more to that series simply than being, swept by Fener. Now, when we're looking at Fener, I gotta admit, hands off, great job by Coach Obradovic. The way that Fener came to all of these games, they were prepared to everything that Panathinaikos had to throw at them. Now, I would have expected a bit more on the creative side from Panathinaikos, since they kept attacking them on the perimeter, and they made it hard for Panathinaikos to have a solid offensive plays, especially in the half-court sets when, the only way they could have moved the ball was sideways and not exactly in front. So you got sometimes Kalinic and Ekpe Udo switching on Mike James, allowing him to pass the ball sideways whenever the ball went inside to Barusis. And that's like pretty much the only thing we got from him, trying to post. And then, there was a trap from coming from the weak side. A lot of things I didn't understand. Like, for example, whenever whenever Kalinic came to try and guard Mike James, how come the player that was, supposed to play with Kalinic didn't come and set the pick and roll for Mike to try and, split the defense and go all the way? A lot of, solutions that could have made it look that could have made this amazing and potential playoff series go the distance. For me, it's a disappointment that Panathinaikos have not managed to win even a single game. But for Coach Obradovic to manage to get 3 sweeps in 3 years is nothing less of remarkable. Aris, I would like to hear what you thought about this entire, playoff series for starters. And do you agree that in some way, the way that all things developed with the bus incident might suggest that maybe the team was not as together in a way as we thought they were?
You are more than right, Moshe, about the division on the team. That was evident after the bus incident, which is something that we will address a little bit later. Let's see now what happened on the court. Pasquale is one of the best coaches in Europe. He is one of the most prepared in Europe. His playbook is said to be the biggest in Europe. The problem is that he can't adjust when something happens on the fly. He can change a lot of things during the games. That's his weak point, and that's what Obradovic took advantage. And Obradovic has taken advantage of this thing many times in the past. He has a great record against Pasquale. So there is one point, the duel between Obradovic and Pasquale, with Obradovic knowing how he will put Panathinaikos in trouble. There is also a minor incident after everything that happened throughout the series, in which the sideline reporters of the Greek TV station that holds the rights for the EuroLeague said that Pasquale in game 1 was begging his players to stay in the system, and they didn't. I repeat that without Kalathis on the acquisition, without Kalathis running the game, Panathinaikos is playing a brand of instinctive one-on-one basketball, which helped the team reach the point they did, because it was a team that changed after Pasquale being hired. But on the other hand, when you are in the playoffs and you have prepared certain things, you have to stay within the pattern. If you don't do that, or if you change everything completely, then you will be in trouble against a coach like Obradovic and a team like Fenerbahce. Also, Fenerbahce had the great luck to have 2 of their stars playing their mind out. The playoff series of Ekpe Udo and Bogdanovic will be the stuff of legend, especially what Bogdanovic did on the road at Oaka. If you add everything up, then it's easy to understand why everything went wrong for Panathinaikos. And all the anticipation that there was in Athens, all the talks about beating the team of Obradovic, of getting past Obradovic, of proving that Oaka is the hardest gym in Europe, everything backfired. Everything. Nothing really helped the team. And on top of that, when everything was said and done, when Panathinaikos suffered a sweep, you put the players in a very difficult position. And it wasn't about them being punished or being very, I don't know, professional or unprofessional about their decision about something that the management decided. Ultimately, it was about the self-respect of the players as a professionals. In pro sports, you may win and you may lose. You may also lose badly. But there is a fine line which can't be crossed just for the matter of having a part of the fans pleased. You can ask from professional players to receive the treatment of amateurs, especially when you expect from those professional players to get back to Greece and do their best in order to win the championship title, because ultimately Panathinaikos will face Olympiacos in the finals, and if Panathinaikos gets the championship title from Olympiacos, everything about Fenerbahce will be forgotten, because what ultimately counts is the last taste of the season. I believe that with what happened with Panathinaikos, also they did a great present to Olympiacos, because even after 2 frantic days with Pascual and Giannakopoulos meeting and deciding to put everything behind them, the bus incident will be what it will be remembered from this season, and with the division between the players being demonstrated publicly, I don't see them working as a unit in order to beat a very solid and a very how can I say it, a team that defines the term team like Olympiacos. It will be very hard for them, and that's the bottom line. The fact that Panathinaikos did something so unheard of is proven by also by the thing that happens now. We have a team like Fenerbahce being the first to get a sweep without having the home court advantage, and Panathinaikos is the issue.
So yeah, like I think prior to this series, I kind of had these series even, I kind of had Oli as favourites for the Greek title narrowly. Now I have them a bit more than narrowly because, like, I've had my pretty clear say online about this. I put the blame on the ownership. You know, it's kind of going, you did everything in your power, directly or not, in terms of what your intent was, to guarantee there'd be some level of division. Like, there was no way there wasn't going to be some kind of pushback here, given the manner in which it went down. The upside, of course, you could look at from the Greens is, like, it wouldn't be the first case where a misfit divided team ended up actually playing better basketball because of the players now wanting to prove each other and or the owner wrong. So it's going to be interesting. I suppose one series that didn't end on anywhere near that level of dramatic a note was Sheska completing the sweep at Baskonia. Obviously, the usual complaints of refereeing aside, it was, you know, I don't think Sheska weren't going to win this series after they'd won the first two, and you couldn't really complain with the refereeing decisions seriously in games 1 and 2. I felt that if it went back to Moscow, if it went all the way back there, Sheska would win game 5. If it even got to game 4, I'd have fancied them there, to be honest. Like, Baskonia just never, like, they had their shot in game 1, didn't take it, basically. And after that, I felt the series was almost over. I suppose, Moshe, starting with yourself, and let's not spend too much time on this series because, you know, it's the one people forgotten about already. Sheska just being Sheska, I suppose?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, Cheska being Cheska. It's something that we've kind of assumed, I think, with all of our predictions, like just before this playoffs series started. It's something that was, you know, basically Baskonia are a good team. There were, you know, they had a lot of issues where we went down and we, you know, brought up all the stats with Toko, without Toko, how things went for them. But at the end of the day, they were playing versus the reigning champs. And, you know, it's obviously, we've gotten some close games, which would have been great if this series would have gone to more than just 3 games. But in all fairness, I just don't think they've had the depth and the talent and simply the chemistry to go and fight against a team such as Ceska, and with a coach as Coach Ituris, which I have all the respect in the world for him. I also respect Coach Alonso, but I really got to hand it to Coach Ituris, because since his arrival, there's a lot of pressure when you're coming to a team that has made it like pretty much to almost every Final Four, and you're now expected to bring some sort of a losing pattern in terms of bringing a title. And this is exactly what he's done. Last year, you can say he was a bit lucky with Victor Kriapa getting the offensive rebound and then making the shot. But still, at the end of the day, they got things done last year. And when they are coming to send a message this year, this is exactly what they do. They were the better team. Aris, how did you see this?
You are right, Moshe, on the fact that CSKA finally found a winning pattern, and the fact that they are not playing until now at such a great level in order to consider them unbeatable is something good, because they will not have the usual anxiety of the favorite, which is having a great season and they just have to walk through the Final Four and get the trophy. CSKA feels the urgency to play good. They feel the pressure, and that makes them ultimately better. With that being said, we have to acknowledge that the pressure put by Baskonia, CSKA Moscow, was more than most of us expected. Baskonia was ready for those games, and they were mentally ready, they were ready on the court, and if they had one more good decision maker like Larkin, because Laprovitola has to improve a lot on this aspect of his game, and also the same applies for Rafa Luz. If they had one more player who has the experience and can make things happen for the team, they could even get a road win. If Pablo Prigioni was healthy enough not to retire after returning to Baskonia, this would have been a completely different series. But CSKA feels that they have to fight in order to get to what they want. By far the three more important players of this CSKA version are Dekolo, Teodosic and also Kyle Hines, because Hines is the man who ultimately give the big help, makes the big plays under the paint. Still, CSKA Moscow is vulnerable. That was proven despite the sweep. They are not unbeatable, and this will make a very interesting Final Four semi-final against, especially if they are playing against Olympiacos. And of course, sometimes it's pity to see referees deciding the outcomes by making calls that they seem unnecessary, and also see them deciding outcomes by not making calls that seem kind of obvious. This is another story, and this is a story that has to be addressed by EuroLeague, not by the clubs, but by EuroLeague. Of course, EuroLeague is the clubs, and Baskonia, even though they didn't speak a lot about it, and they have done it pretty politely, I believe that they will raise their voice about being treated with more respect, as Coach Alonso said.
Yeah, I think they definitely earned some more respect, Aris, but I think the big thing for Baskonia was, getting the W's, and they just didn't get them in the end. And of course, the team which, I suppose, won respect, but didn't quite win a series, but did at least get a W in it, was Darussafaka Kadosh, who took that game 2 to bring us into this week, thinking, oof, this could go a lot of ways. Game 3, well, we saw Luka Doncic break out, but then Dashka with a fantastic reeling job, really, to make a game of it, in the fourth before Madrid finally took care of business. And then Game 4 was just Real Madrid were the better side, pillar to post. I mean, you look at this, you kind of go, we had 2 games where we didn't get the best of Luka Doncic. There was the wildly overplayed thing of him crying at the end of the Game 2, where, shockingly enough, an 18-year-old is acting like an 18-year-old every now and again. And that was literally the one moment of vulnerability we've ever seen from Luka Doncic, because end of Game 4, he comes out and, his post-game interview, we've done nothing yet, sorry, we're only in the Final Four. And, he wasn't saying it was some sort of arrogance, some sort of smarm, he was believing it. As far as he's concerned, it's all in the title, that's all he's focused on. I mean, that's just grown-ass man talk right there. So Doncic, he got his act together on the court and off the court during that break, and we knew he was going to have a big playoff night. He had it in Game 3, and then Real, they just took care of business in Game 4, and that's why we're going to see a repeat of the semi-final for Madrid a couple of years ago, where Real played Fenerbahce. Of course, this time it's Fenerbahce on home turf in Istanbul. Moshe, Dashka, I suppose, won your respect, but that probably isn't enough realistically, is it?
Well, I'll start off by saying a sentence that I've been waiting for quite some time to say. I mean, I do think that Dachka kind of poked the giant and awakened him from its sleep, and, they woke up angry. And they reacted like getting both wins in Turkey, and it was what it was, When looking at Doncic, the Doncic thing, seeing him crying on the bench, my heart went out to him that game, but it gave us ultimately the realization of what a great coach is Coach Pablo Lasso, because you're taking a kid, and you're making a kid who's crying on the bench due to a bad performance or whatnot, and as he said, both games, the first 2 games of the season of the series, were not as good for him. And all of a sudden, for Coach Lasso, he comes up big in both games in Istanbul. And I think that gives us more than anything, how great Coach Lasso really is, to be honest. And it's not just for the fact that having such a deep and high quality front court, which he managed to, to keep everyone happy within the frame of the playing time, which is great for itself. This series for me was actually quite expected. I didn't expect, with all due respect to Coach Blatt, to pull off one of the greatest miracles in the history of the game, taking a EuroLeague club that was just, they were rebuilt this season from last year. And to make it to the point where they are in the Final Four, you need something more than just one miraculous season. You need to have some sort of to have a frame for this team. Like the team that had the players that continued from last season. And he had a few of those, but it was just not enough. And if he had the privilege to, to continue to next year's EuroLeague with the same roster, I would have expected even something greater from Dachka. Bottom line, great season for them. But Madrid are Madrid, just like Cheska were Cheska. They were just too good, too strong, too deep. Aris, how did you see this one?
Let me start the opposite way. Darussafaka kind of did what they were expected to do. From the get-go, everyone believed that Darussafaka will be part of the playoffs, and they did that. On the way, they established Bradley Wanamaker and Ante Zizic as bona fide players and leaders. Of course, Zizic will be playing in the NBA from next season, so that's what we had, what we get to see from him in the. Okay, I don't know if this passed, so I will re-record it.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's start from the opposite side. Darussafaka did what it was expected from them to do. they go to the playoffs. I believe that pretty much anyone and everyone predicted that they will be part of the playoffs. Bradley Wanamaker is now established as a true leader of the highest level in the EuroLeague, and Ante Zizic proved that he's NBA ready because he's expected to leave. I think that that's all that we got to see from him in Europe. Darussafaka futures, it will be, at least for next season, not the future that somebody would expect from a team reaching the EuroLeague playoffs. They will play in the EuroCup, and they will have a lesser budget, so it remains to be seen what version of Darussafaka we will see. The question now lies on Real Madrid. Despite being the top team of the EuroLeague during the regular season, Real Madrid also seemed kind of vulnerable after losing Sergio Rodriguez. Especially in big games, the absence of a player like Chacho hurts them. On the other hand, the story of the year for Real Madrid, more than anything else, is Luka Doncic. He's the second coming of Dejan Bodiroga. I believe that we can safely say that they are pretty similar in style of play, and also in the fact that also Bodiroga in his teens left his home country and played abroad in a very different era when it was a very high risk move to sign as a foreigner a team player. Doncic has also something that Bodiroga didn't have: athletic abilities. Doncic is not a top class athlete, but compared to Bodiroga, as it's expected by the gap of generation, he's an athlete that can compete in the NBA level. If Real Madrid gets in the end, that will also mean that Luka Doncic will have great Final Four games. They can't do it without Doncic being a big part of this team, and he can contribute in every aspect of the game. Yul is the leader of this team. This is more than obvious. Yul will take all the big shots. Yul can create for others, but not to the extent that Doncic can. Not to the extent that Doncic can play defense, can rebound, can block shots. He can do pretty much everything. And the story for this Real Madrid team is the sudden blossoming of Luka Doncic. I don't believe that the people at Real Madrid were ready for such an improvement by Doncic. They hoped that he will be an asset for the team, but not to that extent. Aside from Yul, I believe that Doncic is the most important player in the team. Most important than Ion, most important than Randolph. And I don't really remember an important game that was won by Real Madrid without some big input by Doncic. I can't wait to see Real Madrid in the Final Four. This is the most intriguing Real Madrid team in recent years, and it's all about Doncic.
Aris, I gotta ask, I mean, we've been all glorifying Doncic, and for obvious reasons, which he deserves. How do you see a matchup between Bogdanovic, which is more ready or supposed to be more ready, against a young Luka Doncic, which is, you know, one of the most amazing things we've encountered, I guess, in recent years.
It will be interesting, and I don't really know if there will be a matchup between those two. Bogdanovic is probably the best shooting guard at this point in EuroLeague, not named Nando De Colo. Those two players are the best by far. And they are the definition of the shooting guard. They can play as shooting guard in the NBA. Other players like Spanoulis or Yul are in the best case combo guards. De Colo and Bogdanovic has also the physical gifts to play the position. Doncic is one of a kind. I can tell you a lot of Serbs that has been before Bogdanovic and were quite similar and players of that level, or even Montenegrins, or the list is great. Doncic is something completely different. Doncic is a point forward. Doncic is also one of the signs that were evident in European basketball, but with players that didn't have the athletic abilities to support them. Doncic is the continuation of a line that goes from Toni Kukoc to Dejan Bodiroga and now to Luka Doncic. He's practically positionless. He can't play as a center because he doesn't have the physical gifts to do so, but you can see Doncic playing from 1 to 4. And I would like to compare him to Dario Saric, because even if Saric is considered now a forward, he started his career playing also as a guard. They are made from the same cloth, and Doncic, considering his age and the level of basketball in which he is tested, he is much better. You don't see a 17, an 18 now years old kid. You see a real player, and the upside of a player who is already at this caliber is amazing. I really don't see any player from anywhere challenging Doncic as the #1 draft next year. I don't see no one emerging and being better than him, because you say many times, you try to project how a player who is a teenager will compete in the highest level. You don't have to do that with Doncic. You see it. I don't remember anyone after Bodiroga at this age being at this level in Europe. And I mean no one. No one. You can take all the all-time greats of the recent years. Take the Greek guards, Papaloukas, Spanoulis, Diamantidis. Take Juan Carlos Navarro. Take Pau Gasol. Take Tony Parker. Take Dirk Nowitzki. What did they do when they were 18 years old? Who of them played an important role in a championship winning team in the EuroLeague? Who was ready to contribute in the NBA? Doncic has everything. He has high basketball IQ, he can shoot, he can pass, he can dribble, and he's also not a great athlete, but he's an athlete. That's the main difference between him and between Dario Saric, let's say, and the previous generation of those kind of players in Europe. When Toni Kukoc went to the NBA, they lost one season by making him a power forward and putting to his body a lot of weight. After a year, they understood that this was wrong. With bulking him up, they destroyed his game, and they revert and make him leaner. And Kukoc played what he was supposed to play. He was a point forward. It's the same with Doncic, and Doncic is already ready. He's already ready. Yes, nice English. he has a body that it's ready to compete even in the NBA. He will not hesitate like Bodiroga did, who never went to the NBA because he was afraid that his athletic abilities will expose him. This is not the case. Doncic is the hair of Bodiroga, and he can be to the NBA what Bodiroga was in Europe. I really believe that, and I believe that I'm not alone saying that. He's a special player, and he compared to the other players of the past, he has also the body to compete in the highest level outside Europe.
Wow, that was comprehensive as heck, Aris, and I can't disagree with a word of it. I suppose, like, the one thing I was taking away, like, listening to you there talking was, when we describe Doncic, we don't, like, qualify him in any way, which is kind of the cool thing. We're not saying for an 18-year-old. We're not saying, well, he'll adjust to this other position. We're not saying that, like, we're talking about him in ways we didn't talk about, well, like, you know, anyone I can recall, in that, like, you know, if he was to go to the NBA tomorrow, he would look in place in his positions as he plays them now in the NBA as though he belongs there. Like, the ceiling with him, I can't recall. Like, you know, like, he's 18, many things can happen. But, like, in terms of ceiling, like, I just can't recall a guy, you know, European like this, to be frank about it. Like, and I've nowhere near as much time watching ball as Aris, but I've enough time watching ball, and so does Moshe. And I'm pretty certain, Moshe, you're going to agree with me, like, in terms of ceiling, we haven't really talked about a kid like this ever, like.
Well, definitely the ceiling on Doncic is something that we have yet to see in a long time, or even before. You know, the only concern that I have is regarding Doncic, is about him not stop, you know, for him to continue growing. It's something that I've seen with Dragan Bender when he was here. He left Israel with you know, simply getting taller by an inch. You know, he was. It is what it is at the end of the day. You know, they are still young, as Doncic is, and if his body is still growing, it means that, you know, it's gonna have all sorts of effects on him. But in terms of his basketball IQ and what he's, you know, capable of doing right now, I couldn't agree more with Aris. It's like, you know, he's a point forward. Now, in terms of matchup with Bogdanovic, we'll see, you know, what's going to happen in the Final Four, which one would be much more important, which one would have the, you know, the last say or the upper hand. But with Doncic, you know, it is simply remarkable. Honestly, I do not remember a player that was that, you know, that good, that important, had that much big of a role in a championship team. And, you know, all the names that Aris have mentioned, we can also say, I mean, we can also, you know, bring up the name of Marc Gasol, who was playing for Barcelona. Now, true, they were not a championship team that year, but I'm talking about 2008, I think, where Maccabi beat them in a best-of-3 series. Still, you know, it took him some time to grow into his body, to understand what he can do. And with Doncic, it's like, he's 18. He's ready. It is amazing, and, you know, like, it's simply amazing. Let's just leave it at that. It's something great. But, you know, as great as it is, and as there is Final Four, first of all, down the road before the NBA draft, Emmett, I think that this edition of Full Court Press might just came to an end.
Yeah, great way to finish up, obviously. Thanks, Aris, obviously, for putting into words what, even better than me and Moshe could, why we're all so excited about Luka Doncic. And Moshe, you're spot on there. Sadly, it's time to call an end to this show. It's the last issue, obviously, of the playoff season. We will have a Final Four preview. We're not entirely sure what the story is yet. We are also scheduling our shows around the Final Four, so we're going to have more than one preview in many respects. We will be having some big news around the Final Four coming up, so do keep an eye on all our channels for that, for all the latest updates and stuff. And yeah, but from Dublin for now, and I suppose for the playoffs, that's it from Ball in Europe Towers. As always, you can find me, facebook.com/ballineurope, BIE_basketball on Twitter, ballineurope.com itself. And of course, YouTube. We've got back YouTubing again, so youtube.com/ballineurope. You can find all our videos there. Aris, take us home from Athens?
You can find me as always on Eurohoops. You can also see me sometimes at Cosmote TV, and I really hope that the Final Four in Istanbul proves to be the same or even better than the version of the 2012, and even if history does repeat itself as a joke, the fact that Olympiacos is the only team that hasn't qualified yet make the Final Four and this week even more interesting.
You know, just thinking, realizing there is a potential semifinal of Olympiacos Cheska, and talking about taking a trip down memory lane. But this episode did come to an end. So as always, you can find me on I am Team Scout and at MosesB1 on Twitter, Facebook / Team Scout, basically, and the website itself. Yes, we are planning something big as we promised, so no spoiler alerts, at least not just yet. You can watch us all, and you better subscribe on Eurohoops TV. You can just listen to us on SoundCloud and iTunes, and from our joint offices in Dublin, Athens, and Tel Aviv. Till next time.
Sweet 16. An open book on
EuroLeague basketball.
Covering 16 EuroLeague teams.
Gonna be sweet. Sweet 16.